This crispy, light and fluffy batter will take you back to your childhood and give you that nostalgic feeling. It's a British takeaway classic, sweet and sour chicken balls. Welcome back to London's premier Asian cookery school, School of Wok in Covent Garden. We're here for Wok Wednesdays. I'm going to try and stay as true to the takeaway as possible with this, and that is that the pastry or the dough is kind of like a pancake batter or a thick pancake batter. The only thing I'm changing really is the type of chicken or the part of the chicken. Classically, in British takeaways, you'd use chicken breast for this. I quite like thigh, so I'm going to use chicken thigh. But we want nice chunks of chicken, no matter what part of the chicken. And the traditional sort of takeaway trick to making the chicken breast sort of softer would be to soak the chicken in water and bicarb, that's bicarbonate of soda. But I find with thigh, it should be nice and tender anyway, and you get a bit more succulence from it. Now, if you've seen any of our other recipes, our sweet and sour recipes on the channel, you'll notice that I've made them sort of the more home style way of like the Cantonese goloyok, which is a sweet and sour pork or chicken with a dry batter. Now, this batter, I think, really comes from the sort of Chinese takeaway and fish and chips background, where of course a fish and chips batter is a wet batter like this sort of almost pancake mix that I'm going to make now. So I've got plain flour and a fair bit of corn starch or corn flour in the UK that I'm going to mix together. And the plain flour, slightly heavier than the corn flour or corn starch, and the corn starch will help to really get that super crispy edge around the chicken balls. Some salt and pepper. And then you want to use something cold and fizzy, so either soda water, fizzy water. I've got some beer here, just a lager, and you're going to mix up until you get that right consistency. And as I say, you're going for kind of like a pancake batter. And I don't mind at the moment, sort of for the first sort of test fry, to have it on the slightly thicker side before I then add more. Let's see. Still got a little bit more beer here, but I'm not going to use it all straight away. As I say, I'm going to test it in texture. And this, although I say it sort of most probably comes from the equivalent of a fish and chips batter wrapped around chicken and then turned into more of a Chinese takeaway dish. There is a dish, a sweet and sour dish from China called dongbei guoro, which basically is potato starch and water in a batter, a really thick batter that kind of makes a similar sort of textured finish. And what you want is for it to be thick enough to really wrap around and not drip off too much. And we'll try it. The oil here is hot enough, so I'm going to test this before I finish the dish off. With the deep frying, you want to make sure you get as much dough wrapped around each chicken piece as possible before you plop it into the oil. So just go careful with this and then straight in. And you can see with the fizziness of the beer that you get this, I'll show you with this little crisp of dough, you get this really lovely, airy, light batter. Very similar to a fish and chips batter. I think the texture there is actually pretty good. We're going to double fry these, so I'm going to take that out in a second, and then we'll fry the rest. And I'm not going to add any more beer. There's about maybe 2 or 3 tablespoons of beer left on the recipe, but it might change depending on your bag of flour being slightly different to mine. So just sort of use the recipe as a guideline. The rest of my chicken can go into that batter because I'm happy with the texture. It's also worth noting that when you make something like this with a wet batter, much like frying your fish and chips, it always comes out best if you can lay one piece in at a time rather than just throw them all in one big clump, because otherwise they'll just all clump together. So it's a little bit tedious, but this is how we do it. Another very important tip is not to overfill your wok with your chicken. So I'm going to cook this in a couple of batches to make sure that every piece of chicken has really good hot oil surrounding itself. Whilst they're frying, and they need probably on first fry about 3 to 4, let's say 4 minutes, to be on the safe side, make sure it's cooked through. The second fry is just to crisp up. I'm going to make the sauce. I'm going for my classic sweet and sour sauce here. Same amount of ketchup, rice vinegar, and sugar. Our traditional recipe for this has a little bit of dark soy sauce in there as well, just to change the colour a bit. But I'm going for takeaway style, so I'm going to serve it in one of these takeaway tins. So I want it a bit more sort of bright orange in colour. Now if you look at this in the fryer, obviously we've got chicken in there, but it might remind you of sort of the one and only dessert that you get in a Chinese restaurant, or certainly here in the UK, banana fritters. Exactly the same batter. First fry. Now to cook this dish really well, you want to make sure that your oil is clean, you know, it's a fresh oil, batch of oil. And I'm going to deep fry it again, so I'm going to double fry it to get it super crispy on the outside. My sauce is ready just to finish off. I've got a little bit of that beer left, I'm just going to pour that into the sauce. That will caramelise nicely. I've whacked the heat up in this oil to high heat now, because this second fry literally should be no longer than sort of 30 seconds. I want to make sure that it's really nice and hot and fizzing on those wooden chopsticks. Ah! Just put these in carefully. And when the oil's hot enough, you can pretty much fry them all on second batch together at the same time. And you can see how nice and sort of crispy and crackly that batter's getting on the outside after the second fry. Now, of course, in Chinese takeaways, you'd have this in big deep fat fryers or a huge wok just for deep frying. And once those are golden brown, you can start to fish those out. Ooh, look at that. I hope I'm doing the takeaways proud. What is it that all the influencers do? What do they do? They brush a...
Yeah, like brush a knife over it, show how crispy it is.
That is how crispy it is. The rest is so easy. I've got my lovely, bright, sweet and sour sauce. I've got a little bit of oil in my wok because it's the Chinese way of getting a glaze into your sauce. And we're going for takeaway style here. I want that to be nice and smoking hot before I pour my sauce in, because I want it to almost try and caramelize immediately. Smoking hot, bubbling up straight away. That's what you want. Now I'm going to get this sauce to a point where it's got nice syrupy texture before I put my sweet and sour chicken balls in. At the moment it's a little on the thin side, so you just keep giving it a little stir. Now we're starting to thicken up a little. As you can see, that happens quite quickly. So at this point, your chicken balls can go in for a quick toss. Flick that through, just to make sure that it's not sort of cooking that batter anymore. And you'll see how quick and easy that last bit actually is. And look at that. From 3 not huge chicken thighs, I have filled more than a takeaway tin's worth of sweet and sour chicken balls. I'm going to taste one of those. Why did I do that? Word of warning. Maybe give it a few minutes before you try yourself. My version of the British takeaway style sweet and sour chicken balls. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, ding, hit that notification bell. And if you want more of this,